Okay, so here we'll talk about the account team member automation flow that you'll use with your export job and account team members. So at a high level, what's happening is that on the Fullcast side, for each of your territories, you'll be assigning coverage with individuals and specific roles. When you export to Salesforce, those roles are then written to the accounts that they're for their respective territories. All of those individuals are written to the account teams for those accounts. So with each of those account team members, you might want to take further action whenever you create those account team members on an account. So for example, if you have an AE, you might want to have that AE set as the owner of that account, while someone like an SDR, you might want to take that user and stamp them to a specific field. So we have a basic pattern here of how we would typically set up a flow to support this scenario, along with other scenarios beyond just account team members. So the way that we design these flows is that we will set the object as the account team member. We'll trigger it based on creation. Typically, we don't update records from the Fullcast platform. So by setting it to create, you'll capture all the updates that we push as a part of our export jobs. There's a few items here that we'll look at to typically set up. External ID is one. We'll usually set the external ID is null equal to false. The reason for this is that when we push account team members from Fullcast, we'll typically always have an external ID as a part of those records. So by putting this here, you prevent manual account team member creations from inadvertently triggering the logic. The second thing that we want to look at are the team roles. If there's just one role, in your case, if it's just the account executive, you could leave it just as one. But if there's others like sales managers or SDRs, you could also include them here in the rules and just add them as alternatives that could trigger here. Lastly, we have something that we would typically do, which is creating a field called created by automation in our case, and we're requiring that that field be set to false. The reason that we set up this field is that down the line, when we recreate the account team members, we avoid triggering a recursion situation where the creation of those account team members would then re-trigger the flow itself, and we'll get into a big loop situation. So after we've triggered this based on the creation of an account team member with one of these roles and an external ID, the first thing that we've done here is we've set up a decision node where each of the roles that we're looking at here, so for each of the criteria, we're essentially just looking at the team role for the account team member that triggered the initial automation. So we have different paths for each of these different roles. So depending on whichever account team member is created, you may have multiple account team members written to an account as a part of an export job. But depending on which one is called, we have different paths here. But the SDRs, the sales managers, and the account managers, the logic that we've set up is pretty straightforward, where we're taking that individual, we're putting them into a field that's on the account, in this case, the SDR, and we're also stamping the territory onto the territory field. For the account executives, these are a little bit more involving because we're going to be updating the owner ID. And when we update the owner ID on a Salesforce account, it removes the account team member, the account team members that are in place at that time. So in order to kind of counteract that, we have to take a copy of those account team members and rewrite them to the account after we've made that account update. So that's what's going on here. I'll walk through it. Essentially, with the account team members, the first thing that we've done here is we've set up a get territory members node. What this does is this does a lookup to our territory member object, which is in a way kind of like a junction object between the territories and the accounts. So if you look up the territory member object for the account that's related to the initial account team member, you'll get a record that contains the GTM, and we'll use that in a bit. The second thing that we're doing here is we are doing a simple get account team lookup where we're essentially getting the account team that's associated with the current account that we're updating. We'll take a copy of it. We'll store all the records into a collection, into a variable. We'll use that in this collection variable loop that we'll talk about here in a second. In this case, let's go ahead and get rid of that. In this case, what we're doing is we're updating the account itself. So we have the owner ID. We're taking the user that's associated with the account executive. We're updating the owner ID. And again, we're also updating the territory from this territory members lookup that we just did here. And we're putting it into a territory field, which in our case is a lookup to the GTM object. The value that we're stamping into this GTM is a value that's on the territory member called Fullcast GTM. So that updates the account. When the account owner updates, that in turn deletes the account team members. So we immediately go into a loop to update those account team members so that we could rewrite them. In this case, we're looking at a loop from the account team, the get account team. So we're just looping through those account team members that we just took a copy of. The first thing that we do in this loop, so there's going to be 2 assignment nodes, just as a kind of a simple example is what we did here. 2 assignment nodes. This first assignment node is going to take that for every item that's in this loop, we're going to be updating the created by automation field on that account team member, and we're going to be setting it to true. If you remember earlier, we talked about this account team member created by automation field. The purpose of this field is that if we look at our entry criteria, the requirement is that this created by automation is set to false. So for every one of these loop items, as we set it to true, we're preventing that record from re-triggering this as we create the records. So the first thing we do is we set it to true. The next thing that we'll do here is for every one of these loop items that we're going through as a second step, we'll add it to a new variable, a new collection variable, which is a collection of record data. We'll do this for every account team member that's on the account team at the point when this happens. Depending on how many account team members, you might have one account team member that's in the loop at this point, or there might be many that have been written, just kind of depending on the order that we write it to Salesforce. But really, this is the most important. The account executive, or whichever role you select for updates, is the most important variable to look at. So after we've gone through all of the items in your account team member variable, we'll exit the loop. And then the final item here is the recreation of the account team members that we've just updated here. So we'll create new members, and we'll use the new account team member collection variable to source the data for that. So the idea is that once we recreate all these account team members, we should have all of the members that we initially had when we took a copy, with the only difference being these now all have the created by automation value set to true, and in turn, we don't create a recursion situation. But that is it.